Some people walk past a moment that could change their life. They're too busy, too distracted, too convinced that nothing on a sidewalk could possibly matter to someone like them. Marcus Cole was that kind of man. At 44, he had built an empire that most people only read about in magazines. Hotels, real estate, industries spanning 3 continents. A billionaire who had turned cold calculation into an art form. The kind of man who didn't slow down, not for traffic, not for people, not for anything. But that Tuesday afternoon, the city had other plans. His car stopped at a red light on Fifth Avenue. Marcus sat in the back seat, phone in hand, eyes on a deal that needed closing by 4 p.m. The world outside was just noise, just blur, just background. Then something made him look up. A woman, sitting cross-legged on the sidewalk, not begging, not crying, not holding a sign, just drawing, head down, completely still. A dirty piece of paper pressed against the concrete wall. Beside her, her hand moved with a quiet confidence that felt completely out of place against everything surrounding her. Marcus frowned. Who draws on a sidewalk like the world isn't happening around them? The light turned green. His driver pulled forward. Marcus looked back once, then forward, then back again. Stopped the car. The driver glanced in the mirror. "Sir," I said, "stop the car." He didn't know why. He just knew he wasn't driving away. Not yet. She didn't flinch when he walked up. Most people did. There was something about Marcus Cole. The suit, the posture, the way he looked at the world like he already owned it. That made people uncomfortable. But Elena Brooks just looked up from her drawing, studied him for a second, and went back to her paper. That surprised him. "What's your name?" he asked. "Why does it matter?" she replied. Not rude, just honest. He sat down across from her at a small cafe 10 minutes later. His driver waiting outside. His 4 p.m. meeting canceled without a second thought. He ordered coffee he didn't touch and looked at her directly. "I have a proposition." Elena raised an eyebrow. What came next? Even Marcus felt the coldness of it as the words left his mouth. He wanted a child, an heir, no relationship, no emotions, just a legally binding contract, full financial support, and a life-changing sum of money at the end. Elena stared at him, then laughed, then stopped laughing because his face didn't move. "You're serious." Her voice dropped. "I don't waste time on jokes." She looked down at her drawing, at her torn shoes, at hands that hadn't held a warm meal in 3 days. The billionaire across from her was offering a way out, and they both knew she had nothing left to say no with. She didn't sign right away. Marcus had expected that. The hesitation, the nerves, maybe a few tears. What he didn't expect was Elena pulling the contract closer, flipping to page 2, and reading every single line like she'd done this before. "This clause," she pointed without looking up. "What happens if there are medical complications?" Marcus blinked. "Everything is covered." "That's not what I asked." He leaned forward slightly. "You'll have the best doctors in the city, around the clock." She flipped another page. "And this, if I want to leave before the 3rd trimester? That's not an option. Everything is an option until I sign." She finally looked up. "You wanted someone quiet, didn't you? Someone who'd just take the money and disappear." Marcus said nothing, because she was right. They went back and forth for 40 minutes. Elena asked questions his own lawyers hadn't thought of. Marcus answered each one. Sometimes irritated, sometimes quietly impressed. Finally, she picked up the pen, held it for a moment, then signed. Marcus signed beneath her name. The room went still. Neither of them spoke. Neither of them moved. Something had just happened that had nothing to do with the contract. Neither could explain it. Neither tried. The gates opened slowly. Elena watched through the car window as Marcus Cole's mansion came into view, and her first thought wasn't beautiful. It was cold. Everything was perfect. Too perfect. Marble floors that reflected light like mirrors. Ceilings so high they made you feel small. Furniture that looked like it had never been touched by anyone who actually lived there. It wasn't a home. It was a statement. Diana Scott met them at the entrance. Warm smile, professional tone, the kind of woman who made impossible things look effortless. She showed Elena to her room, pointed out everything she might need, and assured her that anything she wanted was just a phone call away. Elena thanked her quietly. Then the door closed, and she was alone. She sat on the edge of a bed, so large it felt absurd, ran her fingers across sheets that probably cost more than 3 months of any rent she'd ever paid, looked around a room bigger than every apartment she'd ever lived in, combined. Outside, a billionaire's empire. Inside was one woman with a small bag, a sketchbook, and a decision she couldn't take back. She lay back and stared at the ceiling. What have I done? Not a question anymore. Just a thought that sat on her chest. Heavy, quiet, and completely unanswerable. The first week, Marcus was invisible. Meetings, calls, documents. The billionaire ran his empire from behind closed doors, and Elena barely saw him, which was fine. That was the arrangement. Clean, distant, professional. But then small things started happening. Things that weren't in the contract. One morning, Elena took her sketchbook to the garden, the only place in that enormous mansion that felt like it had any air in it. She sat under a tree and drew, lost in it, the way she always got lost in it. She didn't notice Marcus standing at the window. He told himself he wasn't watching. He was just thinking. The garden happened to be outside. 2 days later, Elena opened her room door and found a package on the floor. New sketchbook, quality pencils. No note, no name, nothing. She looked down the hallway. Empty. That evening she passed Marcus in the corridor. He didn't mention it, just gave her a brief nod and kept walking. She almost said something, but the look on his face stopped her, like a man who had surprised himself and wasn't ready to admit it. Something was cracking behind those cold eyes, slowly, quietly, and neither of them knew what to do about it. Marcus came to the appointment for one reason: efficiency. He wanted to hear the doctor say everything was on track, then get back to his 11 a.m. call. Simple, clean, in and out. That's not what happened. The doctor moved the scanner slowly. Elena stared at the ceiling, jaw tight, arms stiff at her sides. Marcus stood near the wall, arms crossed, eyes on a monitor like it was a quarterly report. Then the sound filled the room. A heartbeat, strong, fast, rhythmic. Elena exhaled, but the doctor didn't stop moving the scanner. "And here," he said quietly, adjusting the screen, "is the second one." Silence. Elena's head snapped toward the monitor. Her breath caught somewhere between her chest and her throat. She blinked, once, twice, like she was waiting for the doctor to say he was wrong. He wasn't. Twins. She felt tears push forward and force him back down. Not here, not in front of him. Marcus hadn't moved. He stood exactly where he was. But something behind his eyes had completely changed. The man who built a billion-dollar empire on calculated decisions was standing in a hospital room, staring at a screen, with absolutely no idea what to do next. For the first time, Marcus Cole had no plan. After the appointment, things changed. Not dramatically, not overnight, just quietly, the way a crack in a wall spreads before anyone notices the damage. Marcus started appearing. Breakfast, the garden, the hallway outside her room at odd hours. Always with an excuse. Checking on progress, reviewing something with Diana, passing through. Elena said nothing, but she noticed. One evening he sat across from her on the garden bench. No phone, no documents. Just sat there. "You never talk about yourself," Elena said without looking up from her sketchbook. "There's nothing worth talking about. A billionaire who built an empire from nothing. And there's nothing worth talking about." She looked up. That's either very humble or very sad. Marcus stared at her. Nobody talked to him like that. Not his lawyers. Not his board. Not anyone. You don't filter anything, do you? It wasn't a question. Filtering is exhausting. She went back to drawing. Try honesty sometime. He should have shut it down. Changed the subject. Walked away. Instead, he stayed. They talked until the garden lights came on automatically, neither of them noticing the time passing. Walking back inside, Marcus felt something unfamiliar sitting in his chest. Dangerous. He recognized it immediately and wanted nothing to do with it. It started with a pain Elena tried to ignore. She told herself it was nothing, sat through it, breathed through it. Then the second wave hit, and she knew. Diana called Marcus. He was in the middle of a meeting with 7 people when his phone buzzed. He looked at the screen once, stood up, and walked out without a word to anyone. The hospital was a blur of movement. Doctors, corridors, bright lights. Marcus stayed right beside her, not because the contract required it. There was no logical reason. He just couldn't make himself leave. "You don't have to be here," Elena said between breaths. "I know," he replied. He didn't move. Hours passed. Elena fought through every minute with a quiet ferocity that Marcus couldn't stop watching. No screaming, no breaking, just raw, exhausting strength. Then the first cry, small, fierce, filling the entire room. A boy. Marcus felt something crack open inside his chest that he had no name for. Then the second cry. A girl. The doctor placed them both in his arms within minutes of each other. Marcus looked down at 2 faces so impossibly small, so completely dependent, so entirely real. The billionaire who wanted an heir disappeared completely. What was left was just a father. The goodbye that almost was. Outline 9 she packed slowly. Not because she had much, she never had much, but because every folded piece of clothing felt like a step towards something she wasn't sure she could survive. The twins were sleeping when she went in to say goodbye. Elena stood over the cribs for a long time, studied their faces. The boy's tiny clenched fist, the girl's mouth moving softly in her sleep. She memorized everything, told herself she was ready. She wasn't. She picked up her bag and walked downstairs. Marcus was standing in the foyer, still quiet, watching her come down the stairs with an expression she had never seen on his face before. Not cold, not calculated, something else entirely. She reached the bottom step. "Everything's ready," she said. Steady voice, dry eyes, years of practice holding herself together. Marcus reached into his jacket, pulled out the contract. Elena frowned, confused, then alarmed. "Marcus, what are you?" He tore it, clean down the middle. Then again, pieces falling to the marble floor between them like quiet confetti. He looked up. "I don't want you to go." 6 words, barely above a whisper. Elena stopped breathing. All her walls, all her logic, all her careful preparation for this exact moment, gone, just like that. She didn't run into his arms. That's not who Elena Brooks was. She stood there, looking at the pieces of contract scattered across the marble floor, and felt something she hadn't expected. Anger. "You think tearing up a piece of paper fixes everything?" Her voice was quiet, but sharp. "You think that's all it takes?" Marcus said nothing. "I have spent my entire life being someone people walked away from." She set her bag down slowly. "My father left before I was 10. The one person I trusted completely disappeared when I needed him most. I ended up on that sidewalk, Marcus, not because I was weak, because everyone I ever counted on decided I wasn't worth staying for." The room was absolutely still. "So no, I can't just say yes because you tore up a contract. Because what happens when it gets hard? What happens when excitement fades and I'm just me again? Ordinary. Difficult. Too much." Her voice finally cracked. Just slightly. Marcus crossed the room. Didn't touch her. Just sat down on the bottom stair, right there on the floor, and looked up at her. "Keep going," he said quietly. She blinked. "What?" "I'm not going anywhere. Keep going." And for the first time in her life, someone actually meant it. He didn't plan it, which, for Marcus Cole, was itself extraordinary. No reservation. No ring in a velvet box. No carefully chosen words rehearsed in front of a mirror. Just a Tuesday evening in the garden. Twins sleeping inside. The sky doing something quietly beautiful with the last of the daylight. Elena was sketching. Marcus was supposedly reviewing documents. Neither was doing what they pretended. He closed a folder. "I've built things my whole life," he said, not looking at her. Eyes on the horizon. Companies. Deals. Structures designed to last. I was good at it because I never needed anyone to make them work. Elena's pencil slowed. This, he gestured at nothing specific. the garden, the house, the invisible weight of everything between them. I can't build this alone. I don't want to. He finally looked at her. I've never wanted anything the way I want this to be real. Elena studied his face for a long moment. No performance, no calculation, just a billionaire who had everything. Sitting in a garden at sunset, completely exposed. She believed him. The wedding was small, 20 people, garden ceremony. Diana Scott cried from the very first word and didn't apologize once. 2 tiny babies slept through the entire thing in matching outfits, completely unaware that they had walked into 2 broken people's lives and quietly put them back together. The mansion was unrecognizable. Not the walls, not the marble, not the crystal chandeliers that still caught light the same way they always had, but everything else. The silence that used to live here, that heavy, expensive, suffocating silence, was gone, replaced by something Marcus Cole had never once budgeted for. Noise. Good noise. 2 babies discovering the living room floor with the focused determination of tiny explorers. A boy who had learned that knocking things overproduced interesting sounds. A girl who watched everything with enormous, serious eyes, then smiled like she knew exactly what she was doing. Elena was in the garden, painting. Not to survive, not to fill empty hours on a cold sidewalk, but because she was finally free enough to create something just for herself. Marcus came home at 4 p.m., not because his last meeting ended, because he chose to leave. He stood at the garden doorway watching Elena paint, twins crawling behind him, the evening light doing something warm across everything, and felt something that no business deal, no acquisition, and no billion-dollar milestone had ever produced. Enough. For the first time in his life, everything was exactly enough. Marcus Cole had everything the world told him to want. Power, money, control. But it took a woman sitting on a sidewalk with nothing but a pencil and her dignity to show a billionaire what he was actually missing. Some people spend their whole lives building walls, and some people, without even trying, walk straight through them. So here's the question we're leaving with you today. Did Marcus have to lose control to finally find something real? Tell us what you think. Drop your rating in the comments right now, 0 to 10. Be honest. We can handle it. And if this story stayed with you, if it made you feel something you weren't expecting today, then you already know what to do. Subscribe, ring that bell. Don't miss what's coming next, because next week another story is waiting. And trust us, you want to be there for it.